Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Before we get started, if there's anyone out there that has a story they'd like to share on this show, you can contact me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. If anyone wants to contribute to help make this show, you can go to a link in the description, PayPal me. It's super easy to use, and every contribution is very much appreciated. Now, today we have a guy whose name is Don Gummow. Don, if you would, I'd like for you to introduce yourself and tell kind of what you do and and all that kind of stuff. And you can plug Will also if you want to.
Okay. My name is Don Gummow. I'm 52 years old. I was born down in southeast Massachusetts in Brockton. I live up in Maine now. And for the past year, just over a year, I've been with Will Jevning's research group. And I'm a team leader in Maine and Massachusetts, and also the assistant Northeast director, which keeps us busy.
Yeah, I bet it does, man. I'm assuming I'm assuming you're hearing quite a few encounters and things like that.
I am, yeah. It's this is the time of year, the fall. I seem to hear more and more, and I'm meeting more and more people on Facebook, online, and in other groups. Getting more that way. But the winter time, I think, is the easiest time around here to locate them. Just following their footprints.
Yeah. And I think Will Jevnings is such a respectable person in the Bigfoot arena because he sticks just with the facts kind of stuff. He doesn't venture off into the mysterious stuff, kind of like I do. I've got all different areas of it, but Will, he has books out and things like that, and he just comes off as a very respectable guy. I just can't help to just have a super amount of respect for him. Can you kind of give him a little bit of a plug?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've been since I've been with the group now for just over a year, like I said, and I have learned so much from Will. I have been just semi-researching this ever since I was about 14. My research started down in the Hockomock Swamp down in Mass, and then I moved up to Maine about 15 years ago. And I'm disabled. I got hit by a car when I was 19, so I got to keep moving and keep walking, and I forage a lot. I'm out in the woods every single day, just walking, doing a lot of foraging, wild mushrooms and wild edibles and stuff. And I do I always look for the Bigfoot evidence on the side, but ever since I joined the group, Will has just filled me in of places where to look, calls to use, and I have just learned tenfold of what I've known before.
Right.
And this group it's growing. The group is growing, and we're worldwide now.
Look, I knew it would, and I know his show will grow too. And I'm going to, if you tap the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, if you tap the screen, there'll be a little dot that's in the right corner of the screen, and you can tap that little dot. It looks like a little white dot with an exclamation point, something like that. But you tap that, and it'll give you a drop-down menu, and I'll put Will's new channel in the menu there. Now let's get to you now. Let's
Okay.
Now where is it that you live and you're having these all this activity?
I'm like on the coast of Maine, about a quarter of the way up, a third of the way up, just near Belfast, about 10 miles inland. So I'm in a town of about I think there's almost 1,000 people now. So it's a small town.
Right.
And a lot of woods. The woods behind my house go for miles. They go for a long way.
So when people think that these Bigfoot creatures are only on the west coast in the north and northwest, that's a complete misunderstanding, isn't it?
Absolutely, they are everywhere, and there's a lot of them around here. They just hide so well around here, and I think their behavior is a little bit different than the ones out west. Out west, they have a little bit more room. I don't think they live amongst people as much as they do on the East Coast. So they really do what they can not to be seen around here. You know, that's what I'm starting to notice. But they're here. They've always been here, you know.
Yeah. Oh man, I've collected stories from the New York area and upper New York and stuff like that. Because you have the Adirondacks and stuff like that. A lot of people think New York is like just a concrete jungle. It's not. There's
You're right.
huge mountain ranges and stuff like that. Adirondacks and stuff. It is not even nothing that is civilized up there. And
Yeah.
yeah, you know, and I've collected stories from that region. And I've had, like I was telling you about a federal officer fellow that was on the show one time. When he was a sheriff, he encountered like one of the dogman creatures up in that area. You know, he has a house on Lake George and stuff like that in New York area. So that whole upper northeast is also a huge area, just the same as the northwest, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. See, and the woods are very, you know, same type of thick woods, and you know, a little different on the vegetation, but it's very similar. Yeah, a lot of wide open areas. People think the East Coast is just all developed, but it really isn't. You know, it's
Right.
where I grew up, right next to. I grew up in Brockton, Mass, and that's 120,000 people. But the town right next door is the Hockomock Swamp, and there's deer, there's Bigfoot sightings there, there's wildcats there. I mean, they live very close to the people. They just
Right.
don't realize it. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And look, this is another thing too, because I hear a lot of people talk about the Bigfoot thing. It's like, all right, there's not that
Yeah.
much area for them to live, and that is completely false. Because
It is.
you take just here where I live in Kentucky, there's a national park that goes from up in Ohio all the way through Kentucky into Tennessee. It's one huge
Right.
area that would a Bigfoot can go from through 3 states and never leave a national park, or you know, a national forest. You go to places like Utah. Just get on Google Earth and look. It is mostly national forest. Uh, it's huge. Utah blew my mind because I was getting a lot of stories from Utah. I have some stories that are coming out. I'm working on because I have to kind of hide identity and stuff like that, and I've got like 3 hours interview with this one family. But I got to looking on Google Earth, dude, and it's like most of that state is woods.
It's wood.
National forest, man. It's like, my goodness, it's a vast amount of area. Most of the country is forest. Why do
Yeah.
people think otherwise? I mean, I don't know how we got to thinking it's all developed when it's not.
Yeah, I know. It's just a misconception, you know. They see the big cities in pictures and they assume, you know, that's everywhere. A lot of people think that of the Northeast, but, you know, especially the state of Maine, there's a lot of woods here in Maine. The whole state is woods.
It seems like too that the government makes some of these areas national forest to protect them.
It does seem like that, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. In Michigan, when there's a lot of dogman encounters, the government will go in and buy that area. You know that?
You're right. I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yep, just to keep everybody else out, you know. But
yeah.
I've noticed around here, I mean, they're everywhere around here. I mean, we don't have much for parks. Well, I mean, there are some state parks, but they're not as big as other state parks in Mass, Maine. But where the sightings, I find the sightings are in the swamps and in the areas, in populated areas where people just don't go. And you would never think that a Bigfoot was in there. that'd be the last thing on their mind, but that's where the sightings come from.
I know
You know?
it's insane.
Yeah.
Mark Zaxby, he researches down in Florida. He'll be using his camera going into these national park areas, and gets you can see something like a face and stuff like that, and it's to me it's kind of clear. I can see the eyes and everything. He's getting these creatures on film, and then he swings the camera around, and you can see a golf course.
Oh yeah, right.
They're not living way out away from people. They're on the edge of these woods too, man, and watching people like entertainment, like iPad. It's
Yeah, I've always called them the Watchers. I used to find little bedding areas around the Hockomock, but they were always behind people's houses, and I realized over time that they weren't there. And they were behind people's houses, but there'd be water in between them and the house. You just couldn't get to where they were, but they would come right into these neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible. They're so good at hiding.
They really are.
And kind of it's a little bit evident when you look at it as a whole. Like up in Ohio, they call him the Ohio Grassman. And I've gotten lots of different stories from Ohio. And people will be out in a field and they'll see like a pile of what they think is hay. And all of a sudden they'll stand up because they were throwing stuff at it. It's like, I threw some stuff at that pile of hay and it stood up. They can hide that easy. And in Utah, I know that there's this one fellow, he was supposed to send me some stuff, and it's kind of a touchy story in a way. But he went to this area and he was looking. This family was taking him on a hike, like through this valley, and he said that it seemed like they would say, "Hey, look over there. I want you to look. Tell me what you see." And he was looking, and all he seen was bushes and stuff like that. And he looked off for just a second and looked back, and all the bushes were gone. It's like, dude, man, that really made me think, man. It's like, okay, that made me really think about the Grassman stuff. And because there was so many people that gave me stories where this thing was 3 big piles of hay out there in the field. And then all of a sudden, they stood up, But a lot of times people don't get close enough and they don't stand up and people go right on by. That's how easy they can hide, isn't it?
Yeah, I took an encounter from the town I'm in right here. A year ago, last spring, it happened, and the woman knew what I do, and we were kind of acquaintances. We used to play pool together, but it still took her 1 year to come up and talk to me about it. And she drove by a stump about 8 feet tall, but it had head and shoulders and covered in red moss. So she drove by and saw it and said, "What the heck was that?" and turned around and came right back, and it was gone. She got out of the car, and she said the hair just stood right up on her neck. Now, she was a non-believer at this point. And then she came over, and then the more I informed her, because she was like most people, she saw, the TV shows that goof on the subject, and that's all she knew about it, Right. So I informed her, and I told her what they can do, and it's amazing how they know when to act like a stump or when to act like a rock. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Stumps, they'll just squat down, sit right down, and act like a stump. Or they'll sit down and act like a rock. And sometimes they roll in the mud and get their fur or their hair matted in mud, and they will look like rock. There's some areas where they call the Bigfoot the rock people, and the Native Americans would fight them sometimes, and they would shoot arrows, and the mud that would dry into their fur would it would be like armor. So they thought that they were like rock people, made of rock, but they weren't. They were actually Bigfoot that would waller in the mud. Smart, right? That's pretty dang smart.
Yeah, I think they call them stone giants. I think.
Yes, you're
I
right.
think, yeah, I think they rolled in sap too, didn't they? Once,
Yes,
I
that
think,
yeah. There's all kinds of different tactics, but they were good, weren't they? Good tactics.
yeah, they worked, but it is amazing the knowledge, it's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's insane. Hey, I've been looking into, and I was going to make a video here sometime soon about the monkey people who built the land bridge over to Sri Lanka.
You're right. I've seen that story.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay, and if you look at the paintings and stuff like that, it's monkey looking people, and lo and behold, there's dog people. So I was going to touch on that, and I was going to touch on some other things on the dog man and the dog headed people throughout history and stuff like that. So that'll be coming up sometime in the future, in the near future, maybe this month. And these
right.
dog men being silk weavers and things like that, and the kings were trading with them. But anyway, let's get to your stories, man.
Yeah,
Let's talk about your encounters that you have had, and then we'll talk about things that you investigated. Is that cool?
okay. Oh, that's
All
great.
right.
That sounds good. Okay, so I could say my first actual encounter wasn't a sighting, but I was in Vermont, 1999. Me and a buddy of mine were just starting to hike on the long trail, and we had only got about 50 feet up the trail. And I bent down to tie my shoe, pick up a rock. I bent down for something, and right when I bent down, the creature jumped from a tree just to our left, and it was right in the bushes, probably less than 50 feet in there. We could see the top of the tree shaking. But when the thing hit the ground, I had never felt anything shake the ground like that, ever. And to this day, I cannot recreate what we felt. The ground shook incredibly. And then I saw 2 footfalls, because I was down low, and I saw 2 feet fall, and first thing I saw was bear. At this point, I kind of believed in him, but I was still on the fence, and so I was thinking bear, but then it moved so fast and so quietly, just on 2 feet, it was gone. And, we were thinking cat, and it took me about a year until I read of another encounter in that area, and then it just clicked. I knew what we had heard jump out of the tree and what I had seen run by. So that got me back into it again. I started getting back into Bigfoot, the subject. I had been doing it since I was 14 down in the Hockomock. So, but like I said, it was just semi-research. I would just go out to see if I could see anything. I never looked for footprints or broken branches or any sign. I didn't know enough back then. So that was 99. I got back into it, and it wasn't until 2014. Now, up here in Maine, I'm out in the woods all the time. Wintertime, I go out whenever I can, and I'm always looking out there for something. So 2014 was the day the Patriots won the Super Bowl. I think it was February 2nd. I saw the day before, a friend of mine pointed out a post on Facebook about 2 friends of hers that had seen a Bigfoot run across the cemetery. So I went out there the next day, and I found his prints, and they were 8 feet apart. They were 17 3/4 inches to 18 inches long, and they were in the position of a woman's foot in a high heel. So he was running on the balls of his feet, and there was about 3 feet of snow. And what amazed me is not only the 8-foot steps he was doing, but he did not drag going into the snow, and he didn't drag coming out of the snow. He just put his foot in and pulled it right out. Plus, he was doing 8-foot steps. So there was a big one there. So I looked around and I measured tracks. I took some pictures. I went into the woods. But when I first got there, let me start when I first got there. When I first got to the cemetery, I walked in and I could see 3 deer off to the left-hand corner up ahead of me, probably about 300 feet, 400 feet to my left. And I was coming right up the middle of the cemetery, and I'm watching the deer, and I'm just waiting for them to take off. Now, the deer were all walking in circles. They were nervous, is what I realized later. They were just walking in circles, and they really didn't care that I was coming up to them. And then all of a sudden, they all took off to the left, and at that moment, on the right, I caught some movement, and I saw snow go up in the air, and I saw particularly what looked like an upside-down fish hook of snow up in the air, and then it was at least 6-7 feet in the air, and then it came straight down. And I could tell something had just gone in the woods there, and I couldn't really tell what just went in the woods. So as I went to that corner to see what was going on over there, I just had a bad feeling, and I couldn't go into that corner. I just wouldn't go into that corner. So I went around a little bit, and I came through the woods, and I was looking into that area, and I could see what looked like two legs. If you had covered your legs with snow and then pulled your legs out, I could see two legs, and I could see where a body was under the snow. So he was laying under the snow next to the deer trail, waiting to come out and get him, I guess. So he took off into the woods. I stayed there for about 2 hours going around the whole area, looking for more prints, taking more measurements. And I wasn't with the group at this time, and I wish I knew a little bit more, but I would have looked for a little bit harder, but I didn't. I was alone out there, too. So I stayed for about 2 or 3 hours, and I started to leave. And right when I got to the exit of the cemetery, I still had another quarter-mile walk through 3 feet of snow. It's just a dirt road that goes straight into the woods. And I still had, at least maybe a quarter mile to a half mile. So right when I got to the exit, I hear this whistle, and it's 5 bird calls in a row, all different bird calls, and it's loud. And before it finished, I turned around, and I saw the tree he was standing in. I saw, like, his head and shoulder tucked behind the tree as soon as I turned around. And I'm telling you, that's when I first got the feeling, the fear, I guess you call it. I panicked. I said, oh, my God, he's right there. So I put my hand up, said goodbye, see you later, and I started getting out of there. What confused me and Will, like, we're not quite sure why he whistled on my way out. I was leaving. He didn't have to call me back, you know what I mean? I'm not sure why he whistled. So that's when I started going online and talking to people, and then I found Will online and talked to him and asked him if he needed anyone in Maine, and that's when I joined the group. So since then, this summer was my big summer to go out and start researching. So I went back to the spot where I had my sighting. So I researched there about almost 450 hours out in that area. And we had a drought up here this year. I didn't find anything. Everything was completely dry. All the swamps were dry. And then I got Lyme disease. So I got bit by a tick. I got Lyme disease. I got diagnosed July 4th. So I was in bed for a week or so till I recovered, and good thing I got it in time, so that's all taken care of. I was thinking that everything was dry out there where I was, and right behind my house I have 3 lakes, ponds actually, but I was thinking that, and it's a large section of woods behind my house. So I want to start researching near the water to see if anything's coming down to the water. So I was going out there, and on August 22nd, I did this 2-mile loop. It's the same loop I do when I go looking for my mushrooms.
Right.
I did the loop, and I was doing the calls. I was doing whistles, I was doing mouth pops, and I was doing this locator call that Will taught us, and that's what I think got it. But after August 22nd, I did the loop, I did the calls, I get back to my house. Right when I stepped on the grass in my front yard, came out of the woods, stepped on the grass, a big snap right behind me in the woods. I turn around, I don't see anything, and I blew it off as a branch falling or a tree or something natural. The next day, August 23rd, I did the same exact loop. I did the same calls in the same spot. I get back to my house on the same spot in my front yard again, snap, right behind me in the wood line. I turn around, and now I know something's up. So I got my roommate, we went up there, looked around, and we didn't find anything. I didn't see anything, so I blew it off again. And then the next day, August 24th, I went up, did the 2-mile loop, came back to my house, waited for the snap, and it didn't happen. So I came in the house, I got a drink, I stepped onto my porch, and right in front of me in the wood line, about 100 feet away, there he is, looking right at me. When I first looked at him, I was looking at his face, and he was in the wood line, and he was pure black. So, and right in front of him, there was all this foliage lit up by the sun. So what that was doing was highlighting his brows. So I saw two big black circles, and I saw an outline. It would look like a tan outline on him, and I'm going, what the heck? And it almost looked like fur around these two black circles, and it almost looked like feathers around. And I was looking at it, trying to figure out what this was. And then all of a sudden, he opens his eyes. He had his eyes closed, so in the middle of those black circles, now there's eyeballs. And I knew right then exactly what I was looking at. And we stared at each other for about 10, 15 seconds, and then he started squinting at me. And I had to look away. I looked down for a second. I looked back up, and he was gone. So I jumped off my porch, and I ran out there. And as I was going out there to the wood line, I could hear something up on the hill crashing or breaking a branch. And I remember thinking, no way, that can't be him. That must be another one. But come to find out it was him. This creature moved so fast. It's still unbelievable to me how fast he moved. Where his eyes were, he was right next to a tree. And I was able to mark on the tree where his eyes were, and that measures 8'2". So he was about a 9-footer. And unfortunately, I didn't get to see much of anything else because I just focused on the eyes, and there was leaves in my way, but I could clearly see his face from the middle of his forehead down to just about his nostrils. And so he took off. I went, and I ended up following and finding the track that he left. And the reason he was so quiet, that's another thing, he was so quiet leaving this area. He ran on the rocks. Any rock that was protruding from the ground, that's what he was running on. Now all the rocks here are covered with moss, so there was imprints on the moss. But not only that, there was a little tear on each side of the inside of every rock, which we think may have been his thumb, putting his hand down on a rock. We think he got out of there on all fours. So, yeah, I went up. Now, after I went up there and checked everything out, I came back to the house, and now I'm freaked out because I spend every day up in these woods. So now I'm going, oh my God, there is one here. You know, and I've been here 15 years. Ever since I moved here, around 04, me and my son walked out with the dog one night, and I was going to put the dog on the runner. As soon as we get outside, something screamed at us. It was loud, and it was right at the end of the dog's runner. I felt it through my chest. It was more of a growl scream is what it was. My son and my dog ran in the house so quick. All I heard was the door shut behind me. And I had a big dog. She was about 120-pound Shepherd Roddy mix. And she didn't fear anything, but that day she was shaken when I got into the house. I stood there frozen for a couple seconds trying to look into the woods, but it was nighttime. I couldn't see what it was. And then not long after that, I've had dog food go missing. Not just like pieces of dog food, like big amounts of dog food would go missing. And I thought it might have been another dog's coming in. I wasn't sure what it was. Things. Then I had a friend of mine step out of the house one night. This is all around 05, 06, 07. He stepped out of my house one night to get into his car, and right in front of him, less than 50 feet, I have a big beech tree. And he saw something. He just saw a big black silhouette move right in front of that beech tree. So he got into his car, turned his lights on, didn't see anything, got out of the car, and got growled at. And it freaked him out so bad that he backed up all the way to my house and backed up to my door and was afraid to knock on the door because he thought the creature would come at him. And he stayed there till 5 o'clock the next morning when I woke up. I saw his car out there. I go out there, and he's still freaked out, whatever he saw. So now this time I'm thinking maybe there is a Bigfoot around here, or maybe there is something around here. I had never seen it. We had only heard it scream. And I come home one night, after pool one night, a friend of mine drops me off. My dog doesn't come out running like she usually does, so I'm waiting for her to come. We're sitting in the car talking. Then I see the runner cable shaking. So I go out at the end of the runner, and in the wood line, right where the creature screamed, is where my dog's runner ends. right there, my dog is hogtied and hanging up in the tree. I had never even heard this before. I just heard something recently about a cat that was hung on a clothesline. But my dog, I walked up to it and I just put my arms right underneath her. So her back was at my chest, the curve of her back. She was hooked up about probably about 6.5 feet up in the air. She was hanging off. She was hanging off the cable. The cable came off the tree, wrapped around another tree, then came back to the tree, and then it twisted around several times, and she was hanging up there. And
Wow.
she wouldn't let anyone. Yeah, she wouldn't let anyone do that. So
No.
when we saw that, I didn't know what to think about that. And I do have a theory, but I don't know. I think that these things don't want to be seen. Like, if they would have hurt my dog or killed my dog, that would have been the end of the dog food supply. And it would have given them up. I would have known that something was out there. That's why I think they didn't kill her. They just hung her up.
Yeah, that's a good theory. And most stories you hear, I've had all kinds of them on my channel, and they kill the dogs and even behead the dogs and stuff them under the buildings as
I've heard that.
sign
Right.
to you. But they're not getting the dog food on those cases.
Oh, right,
I had a
right.
case in Utah where this guy raises these dogs, and he's got like all kinds of dogs. Okay, but the dogs like on the end of the line where he's got these dogs on this property, and they're all like lined up and stuff, you know. And he goes out there and he feeds them. And he had this ice cream truck, right, and it has
Yep.
the dog food and it has feed for other animals and stuff like that out there. These Bigfoots were coming and stealing the dog food and coming and stealing the feed and stuff like that, the sweet feed for the horses and stuff like that. And they were killing some of the dogs, like on the end of the line, where the line, how people that raise these dogs, they have like a line of these little hut things, and the dogs are all in each of these little huts.
Those kennels, yeah.
Yeah, these things were coming and killing some of these dogs, and these people got pictures of the footprints where these dogs will surround the footprint, and then all of a sudden the dogs are massacred. To the point of some of them that have the head tore off, spine and all. Yeah, these people got pictures of this stuff, dude. I'm working with them to release it. They're gonna release some of it, and to the point. Look, they've got one picture of one of the sons holding on to a deer by his antlers.
Huh.
And the kids are petting it. Can't even theorize what happened there.
No, not sure there.
They were chasing this deer. They were hitting it with infrasound, and the deer was so confused. It was confused for like 2 hours. The son called the family and said, "Look, you're not going to believe what I'm sitting here holding." He had a deer held by his horns, dude. And he's like, "Okay, y'all come down now." And they came down with the grandchildren, and they got pictures of them petting it. And he's holding on to one horn. And this deer's all confused, just dazed and confused. Within 2 hours, it came to, and it took off.
Wow.
All right. And they didn't know what to make of it. And I said, "Look, man, this thing got hit with infrasound. They were chasing it because they thought it was just shock. It's like it's not just shock, because things in shock keep running. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But infrasound can do all different types of things.
The more I hear about these things, nothing really surprises me. They get stranger and stranger the more you hear, you know. But
Yeah.
I did have another thing when you were talking about the deer. I foraged mushrooms, and when I was out picking mushrooms, I was nailed down to the ground, and I'm cutting some mushrooms, and I had a group of about a half a dozen deer. They're all does. They come running through the woods directly at me, and I turn around and I see deer coming right at me, and most of them turned away from me, except one. She stopped right there next to me and just looked at me, and she was less than 10 feet from me. I remember looking up at her, going, what the heck is this? All these deer just ran right at me. This was a few years back, and she just walked away slowly, just watching me, and just walked away and disappeared behind a tree. And I always thought that was weird. And where they came from is where I found out these things were bedding this summer.
Huh.
So they could have got chased, you know, and I went up into my yard shooting one day, too. This was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and I always yell out, anybody up there, I'm shooting, and nobody answered, so I took a shot, and right behind my target area, I have a stone wall, and on the other side of the stone wall, I saw this big, flat, black back. It wasn't a bear, but it was flat backed, and it was going behind it was running fast behind the stone wall. I could only see its back, though, and it wasn't pure black. It was like black with gray mixed in, like a porcupine would look like. But whatever it was had a flat back, and it was moving. And still, back then, I said, it's probably a bear or something. You know, I never thought it was anything other than a bear.
Right.
Yeah, when you was talking orangutan, that's what I saw here. This one here had those high brows that went all in a complete, there was a perfect circle. He had circular brows, and they came right down to his cheeks.
Were the eyes
Pure
black?
They were pure black, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
scary, isn't it?
It would have been a lot different if I wasn't standing on my porch. You know what I mean? If I was in the woods and saw this, I would have panicked. You know? But after the sighting that day, I have a little digital camera and a video recorder, and I have 2 batteries with it, and I charged both batteries up, and all I did was walk up into their area, and I said, I know where they are now. Once I knew they were here, I knew where they were, because there's an area back here that I just won't go in when I forage. I have been in there one time, and it's a very thick area, and it just felt weird when I was in there. I did not feel comfortable in there at all when I was there. Right. So I never went there again, and this is where I picked them up, right behind my house up on a hill, and they're right there. They're not far from my house. Well, they're gone now, but this summer they were there. Now, up until that point where I saw him, they stayed away from here. They would never come around. Like, I would always hear weird noises in the woods, but never anything that raised an alarm or I said, oh, that's Bigfoot. After I saw him, it started immediately. They came down to my house almost every night for at least a month. And then it turned into like every other night until November 7th was the last day they were here. That was the last time I recorded anything. And what it sounds like is the whole family came down and went right through my yard and then took off to their winter habitat. I've got some crazy, I'm going to have to send you a copy. I'm going to burn them onto a CD. But what I got in recordings, I've got pops and clicks. And one night, this thing screamed at my house for 15 minutes. That was the last night. And I can't really figure out why he was screaming at my house. He was just going, wah, wah. And he was right behind my house, yelling at my house. I think he wanted to know where I was. He wanted to see me because the family unit was moving through. I think he just wanted to make sure I was here. Now, okay, so August 24th is the day I saw him. So they kept coming. For about 3 weeks, I went up there with the camera, and I walked around into the area. I was hoping for a bluff charge. Now, after 3 weeks, I came back to my senses, and I didn't go do that anymore. I just said, well, there's got to be another way to get him on camera or something. But I didn't know what to think, though. That first 3 weeks, I was I'd freak out some days. I wouldn't go up there at all. It just would not feel right for me to even go into the woods. I couldn't cut wood by myself this fall. I had to have someone up there watching my back. They were always up there. Wherever I put my recorder, they would always be somewhere else. And finally I realized that you have to hide the recorder, like let it fall out of my pocket.
If you pay attention, if you live in an area like that where they're at, if as soon as you open your door, you're going to hear a bird call, a knock, or something. And sometimes they even lure you out. They make a call and to get you to look out.
Exactly. I know that's what I was noticing. It's funny you said that about if you open the door, because on one of the recordings, my door was unlocked, and either me or my roommate locked the door from inside the house, but you can hear the lock on the recording. And you can hear something go, right next to the recorder. And there was nobody out there that night. It was 2 in the morning, 1:30, I think, when this happened. And it's not a word or anything, but it goes,
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah, it was odd. Like, and if you listen to the recording, like, the recorder was right behind my house, less than 50 feet behind my house, facing uphill, the microphone facing uphill. And they were right here next to the recorder. You can hear them walking by the recorder. And then, well, let's see, I wrote a few things down, like the dates and everything, because I couldn't remember. I started having some crazy things going on here. Let's see, September 11th, I heard a locator call. It's just a low woo of a sound like that. I heard that come from the woods, and it was before the sun went down, and I heard some whistles. And at midnight that night, I went out and heard, right when I got outside, I usually come out, clear my throat or something, let them know I'm out there. Right when I stepped outside, right across the street from my house, I hear, it sounds like someone taking a stick and rattling it between two trees. That goes on very quick for about 5 beats. And then I hear a whistle come from uphill from my house. And then right in front of me where my sighting was, I can hear footsteps, crunch, crunch, crunch. And I'm going, oh my God, I got 3 of them here now. I went in and got the recorder, and I put it back outside, and nothing. I didn't get anything else the rest of the night. So that's when I know they saw me put it out there. But that same day, I went up, and I went to go cut some wood. I brought the chainsaw up on the hill, and I didn't feel right. I was very uncomfortable up there. So I came back down, and it's the only time I got something thrown at me. Something came through the woods, a rock or something, and hit my canoe. And I went, oh, my God, they don't want me up there using the chainsaw. So that was, I think, like September 13th during the day. And then that night, which would have been the 14th, at 1 a.m., 1:30, I heard a whistle right through my bathroom window, which is less than 20 feet from where I was sitting. But just like a two-tone whistle came in. And I went, what the heck? Then I went right outside, and I could hear him in the bushes. Like, the wood line is less than 20 feet from my house on that side of the house. And I stepped out, and I knew he was right in the wood line. And I said something like, I know you're in there. You know, I said, you know, I'm going to close the window, or something I said to him. I get nervous. I end up talking to him. But I came back into the house, and I shut the window, and I never let him I never let him whistle into the window again. I never opened or left the window open again. That freaked me out.
Wow.
Because he came right up to the house, and I found where he came up to the house. He crawled through some grass on all fours, and then he stood up right by this spruce tree, right behind the bathroom window. And I can see exactly where he did it, and there's a little opening in the tree he looked through, and he gave his little whistle. I went, oh, my God. That one kind of weirded me out. So then I didn't really have nothing until September 22nd, about 1 a.m. I went out there, and when I went out, I gave a whistle, I think, or I might have done some mouth pops, but right when I stepped outside, I could hear there was one right behind my house. The one behind my house crashed through the woods and ran up on the hill and stopped right about where that one whistled at me that day. And then, right as that was going on, across the street, I could hear another one coming towards my house, crashing through the brush, coming towards my house, and he stopped right about where that little drum roll was. And then I could hear the other one coming straight ahead of me, and he came to where my sighting was. So these three got back into the same positions that they were a week earlier. When they whistled and rattled, they were in the same positions. It was almost tactical. It was pretty amazing. They just ran. I've been talking to Will about that. He found that pretty interesting, too, that they all retreated and ran to those positions quickly and then just stood there and watched me. They didn't make any noise. I knew the one across the street was looking right at me, but I couldn't see him down the driveway. And then I could hear the one in front of me, but I couldn't see any of them. And I don't go out there hitting them with lights and stuff. You know, I don't do that. I don't think I'm gonna see anything anyway.
What you gathered there, what you told Will that you heard, that's the good stuff. I mean, the tactical stuff that they did, that to me is the interesting kind of stuff. That's awesome, man. I mean, you collect that information. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and this is pretty close to my house. I mean, very close. The one behind my house was right behind the house, 30 feet, 20 feet, and he just crashed up the hill. So that was the 22nd. Then September 27th is when I got led up the hill. Right behind my house again, I hear a branch snap. So I have a road that goes up the hill, and I was paralleling the sound as it went up the hill, and it kept snapping, going up the hill. Snap. A few minutes later, snap. It's further up the hill. So I'm walking up the hill, and I got about halfway up the hill, and I go, wow, I'm being lured up the hill. I couldn't believe it. I said, I've heard about this before, about being lured out into the woods, and now I'm doing it. So I turned around and went right back home. I always carry at least 2 guns on me, handguns, and I've never pulled them out. I would never do that. I would just not pull them out, but I want them to see them, you know, just to let them know that I'm wearing them. I don't think I ever would, even after everything that went on. They haven't never shown me any aggression. You know what I mean? They came down to my house because I went up into their area. So they came down. He showed himself to me. So within the next 3 weeks, I was going back up to their area. Then they would come down into my area. They were testing me, and I was testing their boundaries, is what Will was explaining to me what was going on.
Why do you think they were doing it?
Doing the luring me up or coming down to the house? Will said as soon as I saw them, I become a threat. I become a threat to the family unit. So they have to watch me. They're going to watch me. And they're going to make sure. And I think that with the whistle, I think that was a test to see if I came out of the house with a gun. I think that was all testing me to see if I was going to come out shooting.
That's very human-like. This ape crap, I don't buy.
Right.
I'm saying I don't buy it the way other people do. These things are more intelligent than we are.
Oh, yeah, in the woods, absolutely. Yeah, and on some other levels, I think, yeah.
We don't do that. We got Bubba next door acting stupid, and, you know, I'm going to kill him. We don't do nothing to that extent of testing them.
Testing, right. And I don't think that was the only time. Yeah, I think that's what it was. I really do, because, I mean, they've lived here for, you know, a long time, and they know people would shoot at them at any moment. You know, they would see him, they would shoot. And I believe that's what he was doing. They kept testing me. That is what, like a sentry. His job is to protect the family. So that's the way he thinks. He does whatever he can do to protect the family.
But that implies structure. That implies government.
A type of family government, I guess, yeah.
It's a governmental situation there, man. You know, there has to be, if there's a sentry, he serves somebody else. Does he not?
Yeah.
You can't say there's a sentry unless he's serving some other dude. he has to be signaling to another guy who's the main guy, and and
Oh,
and
yeah.
and if they're giving calls out and they're whistling and trying to see if you're going to look out and all the stuff you just said, I mean that implies a tremendous amount of intelligence.
Everything in a human's life is convenient.
CIA can study Bigfoot and learn how to surveil.
Yeah, exactly. I believe that.
Seriously.
Right. And the way they did it, it was very tactical when they got back into those positions that night. It was, but see, after that, after he whistled into my window and after those nights where I go out there, now he started coming here alone.
This show was called Mysteries to Search.
Yeah.
Search out these mysteries. Why would he whistle in your window?
I think it was to get me to come out. Whether, you know how other people say they try to get him to come out through the window?
Yeah.
I never knew what that was, but I don't know. I thought it was a test because when I went out there, if he wanted to, he could have jumped and grabbed me.
Let me tell you a little bit of a story. There's
Okay.
a family down in Oklahoma. They had rocks being thrown at the house and stuff like that. Okay. And they had like all the different types of activity around the house. These people ended up getting like this big, huge mastic dog or whatever, one of the big kind of dogs, that's vicious kind of thing. The Bigfoots were like probing them with the rocks.
Huh.
And they probed them long enough with the rocks. They learned where the people were in the house and where the dog was in the house and stuff like that. And where they come out of the house, where they would look out the windows and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so they probed the house long enough like that. They had no idea there's Bigfoot activity, right? These people end up getting this real big dog, and it was going to be the guard dog. And the dude lets the dog out the front door, and the dog runs around the house towards where this activity was happening. Dog ran around the house. The Bigfoot grabs the dog, throws it through the window into the house. Yes, big dog. I'm talking one of those big bull mastic, huge monster dogs. One of the biggest kind of dogs you can have. Vicious dogs, because that was one of the reasons they got the dog, because they thought they had prowlers. It's like, all right, we'll get this big old dog, and we'll get rid of this prowler thing we got. The Bigfoot grabs the dog up, throws it through the window into the house. So he runs back to the bedroom, and he sees that the window is broken, and he's like, what the hell happened? Something broke the window. He goes into the room, he's looking around and stuff, and he sees that dog hiding under the bed, shivering.
Right? That's what mine did.
Yeah, and he sees that the glass is all blown into the house. This guy was like, all right, something threw the dog through the window. Something's going on here. So he goes and grabs the gun, and he goes for the front door. Before he got to the front door, the Bigfoot was waiting at it.
Wow.
Yeah. So they surveilled them people, man. They were doing surveillance on them. They knew where they were in the house, how they reacted. They probed it. They were throwing stuff at the house, see how they would react, what door they would pop out of, what window would they look out of. When he got to the front door, the thing growled. And his mother said, you ain't going out there. And she blocked him. It's like, no, you're not going out. But what scared him the most was that when he went to the front door, it was there waiting.
He knew he was going there, yeah. Jeez. That's another. I guess that's another type of test.
Yeah, man. I
I
mean,
don't know.
so they're not stupid. They're looking in the windows and they're figuring you out and they're probing you. And it's like
Hmm.
that's a bull crap, man. I mean, for people to think that these things don't know what the hell's going on. This thing
Oh,
was at the front door, waiting on him to come to the front door with the gun.
right, right. Yeah, that's crazy.
Really, thank you, Don, for coming on and sharing your information that you have. Thank you, buddy. That's for sure, man.
Yeah.
You've been a fantastic guest. Until next time, God bless, and we'll see you on the next show. Bye.